Okay, cool. For those of you who are new, first of all, I need to apologize for Canvas. I don't ever want to email you or post that many announcements, okay? My goal is not to bother you that many times. Obviously, it's not that simple to post this freaking simple discussion post as I thought it would be. So that is my fault. My apologies. I'll fix it. I will get better. So we don't have to do that. Were you able to respond to other posts? So you put them? Okay, cool. Again, Canvas new to me, so kind of a pain in the butt. If you have them out, HB or anybody else, if you guys are closed laptops, phones and stuff today, do something a little different. Because of the week that it is, I'm going to show you guys a video, and then we're going to talk about it for as long as you want to. And if that wraps up, then we'll shift back into other normal SOMS stuff. Sound good?
Our number 1 is the staff, and our 5 is the staff. What's going on there? Aircraft to rack again.
United 93, that traffic feed is 1 o'clock, 12 miles eastbound 370.
Negative contact, we're looking United 93. United 93, Cleveland, if you hear the center right then. They got that in the dock. Keep it ready to be. You have the ball, folks.
Tuesday, 9:47 a.m.
Hi, baby. Baby, you have to listen to me carefully. I'm on a plane that's been hijacked. I'm on the plane. I'm calling from the plane. I want to tell you I love you. Please tell my children that I love them very much. And I'm so sorry, baby. I hope to be able to see your face again, baby. I love you. Bye.
We're 56865. We have, I believe it is a Boeing 757. Can you see him up there, sir?
That's correct. Looks like he's rocking his wings.
Right.
He's rocking back and forth.
We're 56865. I advise you stay away from that aircraft. Go north as fast as you can.
United 93, have you got information on that yet?
Yeah, he's down.
He's down?
Yes.
When did he land?
He did not land.
Oh, he's down?
Yeah, somewhere up northeast of Camp David.
Because you got to help each other get off the floor. Now,
Sorry, not terribly uplifting today. When this was happening, you guys are some of the first, not the only class to come through that has basically no living memory of this. It's not unlike Pearl Harbor to you guys. I had driven by the Pentagon a week before 9/11, and my brother just graduated officer candidate school from the Marine Corps. And when you go to basic training or you go to officer candidate school, you learn a lot of military history amongst many other things. And we're driving by the Pentagon, September 5th, somewhere around there, and he said, nothing's ever happened to that building. The week before 9/11. I had enjoyed one last summer. I graduated college in June of 2001, and I was about to start my first real job on the West Coast. I'm in Oregon. And I had some buddies at University of Washington, and they were playing Michigan, which was like a top 10 matchup. And me and several buddies, we didn't have tickets because they were so hard to get. We actually snuck into the stadium. We found a way to sneak in the stadium. I watched that great game on a Saturday, and Tuesday morning I'm going to work. First real job out of college. And I had a place to live yet, and I was staying with a buddy in his apartment building, and I'm walking through the lobby, 7:30 in the morning, and the president is talking. I can hear the president's voice. And I'm going, well, that's strange. Why is the president, I thought it was just a recording or whatever. I wasn't sure, but the tone was unique. And I go to work, and everything starts unfolding, and we're just watching it, and we're watching it live. So the first plane, so I'm on the West Coast, so things are starting to envelop already, right, of what's happening. So all we knew was the first plane had hit the tower, so you're thinking accident, right? I mean, nobody thought terrorism. And then we watched live as the second plane flew into the tower. Then you hear about the Pentagon. And then the plane then went down in Pennsylvania, which we suspect, I'm not sure if it's been confirmed or not, we suspect it was going for the White House. I had the good fortune of my grandmother was still alive. All my grandparents are gone now, but my grandmother was still alive, who had served in World War II. And I asked her what was worse, 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, because she lived through both. And she said 9/11. With Pearl Harbor, Europe was already at war. There was a growing sense at some point we'd be pulled in. And so, you know, that was a military strike on a military installation. This was terrorism at its utmost. This was civilian lives. Just under 3,000 people in the World Trade Center, 343 firemen, I think 60 police officers. Around 200, I believe, killed in the Pentagon. Inside, I've been in the Pentagon Memorial. I carry a coin from there. The flight in the Northeast that went down, there were only 40 people on it. Now if you fly, you know, flights are pretty full. And so it was an early morning flight, not that full. They started to piece together what was going on. Now the iPhone hadn't even been invented. So when people were calling, you had a phone mounted in your seat. You had to swipe your credit card and you could call people, which was a relatively new technology as cell phones were coming along. So that's where those phone calls came from. So these guys are on the plane, guys and gals, are on this plane, and they start piecing together what's going on. And I said, well, there's 3 planes that have hit buildings, and your plane's been hijacked. We suspect terrorism, and they're taking things out. And those guys fought back. The reason that plane crashed in the field and they all died is because they fought back against the people that had taken over the plane. And the last thing that a guy said, he was talking to his wife, and the last thing you hear him say was, "Let's roll." When I pulled this video up the other day, it put tears in my eyes because it brought it all back. This was incredibly surreal, obviously changed a lot of things about our world, some things we should have caught. In fact, my mom bought a letter opener at the airport in DC when we were flying out. Letter openers, they're not sharp, but it looks like a knife. It was like this long. And the TSA guy, ironically Middle Eastern, was like, "What is this? Where did you get this? And why are you flying with this?" Still let her on with it. Not unlike COVID, okay? There's going to be unexpected shit that's going to go down. And it's up to you guys next. Hopefully it's not something like this. Hopefully it's not COVID. But throughout history, this is what happens. The unexpected. and the life-changing. And in 5 or 10 years, when it's the next thing, it's up to you guys. So to me, it's very important to talk about this stuff because you don't have a living memory of what this day was like and what happened afterwards. There's some good that came out of it in terms of what happened in this country. New York, not the nicest of cities, not the nicest people. I was there a couple years ago. I was wearing an Aggie hat, and you're on the subway, and everybody's like, "Hey, you know where you're going? Are you good? Can I help you?" Like this, it really brought this city together. I had a friend who was living there at the time. Couldn't get a hold of her for about a day to see if she was okay. It changed a lot of things about this country. The remembering is important. The game on Saturday, was a powerful thing, I think, if you really understand and appreciate what we went through. So I wanted to use today to talk about this and see what questions you have, comments you have, thoughts, feedback, anything like that. Connor.
Well, something that I've never really got a good answer on.
A lot of us.
Well, but the incident, the actual attack is striking itself. Most people, I don't think, were expecting it. But what were your feelings? Somebody living through it when Al Qaeda eventually took responsibility for the attack, and then their justification for it. Did it, like when they said, America has done such and such thing, so we're going to fight you guys? Did it seem out of the blue, or were you like?
According to the intelligence community, this was not surprising. Not unlike Pearl Harbor. There were all kinds of signs that Pearl Harbor was going to happen. We didn't catch all of them. We didn't react to all of them. I think we talked about last week of why the Titanic sank, because it was unsinkable, right? It couldn't sink. It's the unexpected that makes it hard. It's the thing you've never seen before or dealt with that makes it hard. So with this, there were signs. There were people taking flying lessons who had no interest in landing a plane. That's a red flag. There were signs in the intelligence community that there were people that wanted to attack. How they did it was not known and unprecedented. Don't lose your thought. So there's a lot of anger and confusion as to what happened and why. And then this new enemy. And this is why I think it was so different than a Pearl Harbor. This was attacking civilians just for the sake of attacking Americans. So that was rather unprecedented. And it happened on our soil for the first time ever, of them coming here and causing this much destruction. And they had no idea the towers would fall. They were amazed and thrilled with the amount of devastation and death that it caused. Did I answer all your questions? What else? What did I?
Well, I'm just like, I'm sure like a lot of people didn't even know, what Al Qaeda was, and like
No.
Evolution from the Mujahideen.
No. Most people didn't. Again, this is, you go through our history, American history. We have the isolationism factor of being secluded from other parts of the world, and this is what happened in World War I and World War II, and Vietnam was a long ways away, and battles that have happened all throughout American history. So we have this kind of detachment if we're not right there, right? So aside from the Alamo, it's not on our turf. And so, no, we didn't know a lot. Now, again, intelligence community, who these people were. There's clips and videos of people talking about who bin Laden was years before that in the military and politicians and stuff like that. But we didn't take it seriously as to what could happen. So that's, yeah, you get a lot of anger and outrage and confusion as to why. Emily?
I was just going to say, there's a Netflix series called Turning Point.
Yes. Is it out yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it talks about 9/11 and then kind of goes into like the war on terror. And it talks a lot about how like the intelligence community, there was like miscommunication or no communication at all.
Correct.
And how they like picked up this one guy that possibly also could have turned into a hijacker. And so like, it's almost like they were so close to like.
Correct.
He was working with these people, so it's like they were so close at one point.
Yeah, again, not unlike Pearl Harbor. We knew it was coming. We just didn't know when, and we didn't take it as seriously. Not everybody took it as seriously. So the other thing that happened is the intelligence communities, as you can imagine. So, you've got your FBI, CIA, NSA, which was expanded on after this. All these agencies, they don't they don't communicate very well with each other. So that was one of the benefits that came out of it, was being able to communicate and work together, because we weren't good at that. Yeah, Robert?
I had really two things. One of them is, I guess, on a lighter note. It was some sort of a joke, news source or something, like one of those. I forgot what you call them, like The Onion or something. It was like breaking news. Historian says if you read a history book and look at the bad things that happened, to not repeat those.
Yeah.
And then people are like, man, I wish I knew about this sooner.
Yeah, that's about right. Any history majors in here?
And the other thing that I had was looking forward to try and prevent something like this in the future for our generation.
Yeah.
I was watching a movie. It was like Red Dawn. I think it's Red Dawn, where there's a bunch of high school students and then Russia invades.
Yeah, the original.
Iowa.
Don't see the new one. Watch the original.
And I was sitting there and I was thinking, man.
It's Russia and Cuba.
Yeah, Russia and Cuba. I was sitting there and I was thinking, man, if Russia invaded, I don't think there's any way in hell that these high school students are going to be able to do anything. But it just got me thinking about, well, I wonder what.
Wolverines, man.
I wonder. That's the high school mascot.
Yeah. If you haven't seen Red Dawn, watch it. It's a fascinating movie. It's in the 80s. It's a throwback. Better than the. I won't watch a remake. The Russians and Cubans invade the United States, right? And it's pretty alarming, actually. It's really good. Anyway, yeah. Did you have a question?
No, that was just something.
Yeah. What else? No.
I could have lost my grandfather and great-grandmother in 9/11. One of the buildings, the second building, landed on my grandfather's building. At the time, he was working in Wachovia, and that's one of the buildings that were hit. He saw the first plane fly in, and it's hard talking about this and seeing that video, because I could have lost both that day.
Mm-hmm.
But my grandfather saw the first one, and he told his entire floor to get out the building and run. He was the last person out of that building. When he left the building, the second plane hit, and he decided to run. My great-grandmother was right underneath the first tower that got hit, and she still has jet fuel burns on her skin, scars today, as she lives in Florida, peacefully alone. So 9/11 means a lot to me, because I could have lost a lot. And those two people are very special to me. And it's stuff like this where in high school, you got kids that jacked around, didn't know, until I said something, and then shit got real. And I appreciate you doing this, because this is important. I've never seen that video before, but I appreciate you showing that. But that just goes to show that when shit hits the fan, someone's got to step up and take charge and make sure people are okay. And that's what I took from my grandfather that day, because he still gets calls on 9/11 from people he worked with, thanking him for saying, everyone get out the building now. Because if he wouldn't, all of those people would have died. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Matthew?
Sort of just something that Nolan said, like whenever stuff hits the fan, you need some guy to step up. I had a class with General Olstein. He was the former commandant of the Corps, and I don't know how often you have to talk with him. Well, on 9/11, he was actually like right next to the Pentagon or something. I can't remember exactly. So he ended up going to like the hotel and like running the family operations. So I don't know if anyone wants to talk to him, but just send me emails. Like it took like three. I can't say the entire thing because it took like 3 class periods for him to talk about the entire story. But he had a really good story about it. So.
Cool. Thank you. If you haven't had the opportunity to talk to your parents or grandparents about it, please do. To me, I will never forget the day of sitting down and talking to my grandmother, who was 88, whatever at the time, and talking about 9/11 versus Pearl Harbor. You don't remember every conversation, and usually your grandparents are the fun ones, right? Protect you from your parents when you get in trouble, I hope. It's a treasure if you still have them. So take advantage of that. Call them up, visit them, go see them. Danny.
most of us not remembering, being alive but not being old enough to remember 9/11 happening. So many people have turned it into like a punchline of a joke.
Sure.
And
Sure. It happens.
it's hard also not having known it. We only know it by proxy of watching videos, talking to people who lived through it. I think it should get called out more.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like one of those things. It's like, man, someone makes a joke, an off joke about someone's mom, and they're like, my mom is dead.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, wow, you're a piece of shit for saying that.
Yeah.
And it's like the same thing, but I feel like no one really calls out as much. Just an observation. I think it's like, is there a good way to like do that without being like, hey man, you're awful or whatever it is. It's just like a good way to talk about that, I guess.
Yeah.
It's hard to.
Is anybody here who wants to be a fireman? Usually have some considering it. Yeah. So a couple points on that. I have cousins, firemen, got to ride along with them. Serious car accident, people died. The whole way there, they're making jokes. Because their job is so hard and sad and disturbing when people, I mean, the dude who got drunk, there were bottles everywhere, rolled his car, killed him, hit some other people, they had to be life, it was a mess, right? Because their job is so serious and hard to deal with, that's kind of their outlet. Which is shocking if you're not used to it. Now, this sounds like not the same thing. If you watch videos of this, and there's not any in here, the jet fuel was so hot, and this is why the buildings collapsed. It was burning so much, it was burning metal like it was a toothpick, okay, which is why the buildings collapsed. The planes were full of fuel, they had just taken off. So there's so much fuel in there that's burning. It was so hot in there that people were jumping out of the building. There's videos of it, and if you watch the documentary of the fireman, I think it came out, it was a year later, I think it was, which was hard to watch because the scars are so fresh. There's videos of the firemen in New York, and they were just happened to be filming, they were doing a documentary about firemen as this happened. Okay? So there's all this footage, and they're there, and you can hear, they didn't want to show it, you can hear thud, thud. And it was people jumping out of the building. And there's videos of them falling and because it was so hot they were going to either burn to death or die, right? One way or the other. And they chose to jump from 80 floors up. Right? It was pretty awful. So the hard part, right? This is typically what we do. When we get a little time in between it, you know, there's going to be jokes about tragedy and travesty. How you handle it is up to you, and the favorite, it depends, right, is the context. Is it your buddy making a joke, and can you pull him aside? Say, hey man, this is very personal to me for X number of reasons. Or do you call him out in front of the group? That's your choice. But again, this is all coming for you guys in the next time. And in 5 or 10 years, people will make jokes about COVID. They already do. But, you know, if you've lost someone, it's a whole different meaning to you. Connor.
So, you know, a big thing we talk about, you know, this kind of disconnect people our age have, because, you know, most of us were just infants at the time. But do you think it's, how big of an issue is it to you, as somebody who did, you know, live through this, that a lot of people nowadays criticize our response to it, since we only ever grew up seeing the, you know, consequences of our response to 9/11. You know, got the Abu Ghraib in prison, and the confusion over, you know, what's Iraq versus Afghanistan, is it the same as Pakistan, are they even in Afghanistan, and then most recently with the pullout, the resurgence of the Taliban, which I think a lot of people are still, a lot of people who aren't super informed, still confused as being the same thing as Al-Qaeda. Like, where do you think the mistranslation is for us being like, man, you know, maybe trying to fight back after 9/11 was the wrong response?
Yeah, this is the tough issue, right? This is real life. Welcome to SOMS and the opportunity to discuss this, I hope. For me, it was probably the best thing that happened to my generation. We had never been challenged before. I'm sitting in a cubicle of my first job, and I'm a military brat. Grew up around it, never thought I would serve, never had the calling to serve. On 9/11, I'm sitting in a cubicle, my first real job out of school. My life is set, my life is good, I got friends, having a good time. I'm going to start making money. And I'm sitting there watching this happen to my country. And that was the day I decided to serve. I tried to go, my brother just gone through officer camp school in the Marine Corps, gets commissioned in the Marines, and there's not a lot of guarantees in the military. But if you get a certain score on this test, you're guaranteed to become a pilot in the Marine Corps if you get through officer candidate school. Well, you have to get a certain score, and it's hard. And so it took me 3 tries to get the score I needed, but you have to wait 6 months between the tests if you don't get the score. So as that was playing out and taking a while, I enlisted in the Air Force in my local Air National Guard unit. And I've been enlisted ever since. I actually got the pilot slot, but then I tried to fly Air Force, and I asked the Marines to delay it, and they were like, no. Because post 9/11, the economy tanked, and everyone with a degree wanted to go in the military for a number of reasons. One, that's where jobs were. 2, people wanted to serve. But even those who didn't, if you didn't have that calling, people were lining up in New York and DC to give blood. Like, the response from my generation was good because we, like any generation, like you guys, you get criticized by the older generation. Okay, and World War II veterans were very much still alive, a lot of them. Vietnam, alive, which is similar to Afghanistan and bringing some bad flashbacks. Okay, I'm glad you brought this up. It's a hard subject to talk about, and I don't ever want to influence you guys. My job is to get you to think for yourself. I don't want you to think like me. Okay, it doesn't matter if you agree or disagree with me. If you look at Afghanistan and it plays out in Iraq, the locals don't ever want us to leave. The locals want us there. We're probably not going to have time today. We'll get into it next week. I'll show you who he is. Does anybody know who Pat Tillman is? Yeah. Does anybody not? Who does not know who Pat Tillman is? That's okay. Okay, good. I'm glad. Pat Tillman was a football player in the NFL. He played at Arizona State, which means he played against Oregon State, and I hated him because he was so freaking good. He's this fairly, for an NFL college player, Division I, he's kind of small. He had super long blonde hair, and he just flew around the field and lit us up, and I hated him. They were really good at the time. But I admired him. So he's playing in the NFL. He just gets a new contract. He's making all this money. 9/11 happens, and he says, NFL is meaningless. This is no calling to me in my life. Great living, great life, says I'm out. Enlists, okay? Becomes an Army Ranger. And it's basically kind of this national hero. This is my generation responding, stepping up to the plate. Okay? Pat Tillman got killed by friendly fire. And this was related to Afghanistan, I'll bring it back to. There was basically an arbitrary deadline to get from point A to point B. And as they got hung up, there was this horrible communication, and he got killed by friendly fire. If you don't know this, is what often happens as a military is we will usually pin it to one person. We're going to pin it and say it's Patrick's fault, and then we're going to push Patrick out or do whatever to punish him, and that solves the problem. Unfortunately, that is often how the military works. That's what happened in the case of Pat Tillman. There are books you can read about him. I think his mom actually wrote one. I read another one. As someone who loves his country, it's really hard to read and learn about what our politicians did and how they treated him and used him as propaganda. They tried to hide the fact that he was killed by friendly fire because he was a national hero. And they never held the guy who pulled the trigger accountable. And the way the politicians handled it was devastating to me. With foreign diplomacy, has anybody seen Brian Wilson's War? The Tom Hanks movie? Okay, highly recommend it. It's in Afghanistan. During the Cold War, we're basically fighting the Russians. And we get done, and we arm the Afghans to get the Russians out of there, and then we won't build a school. I have a friend who's been to Vietnam, and we were emailing while he was there, and again, this is my take. We tend to have really good intentions. We tend to have poor execution with foreign diplomacy. So this is kind of what happens. And for Vietnam veterans seeing Afghanistan and the way we're we're pulling out is hard, and the people have been there ever since. There's a book you can read called Alone at Dawn. Highly recommend. They're making it into a movie. It's about Master Sergeant John Chapman. En route to his death, he earned 2 Medals of Honor. It's the first ever recorded Medal of Honor. I will show it to you guys this semester, I believe. But a drone kept flying when some Navy SEALs left him behind. It was the first Medal of Honor for anybody in the Air Force after Vietnam. And he actually earned 2 fighting to save the lives of SEALs in a mountain in Afghanistan, and was awarded the Medal of Honor. So the war was different, and this was brought up last class. How we were, Pearl Harbor and World War II made sense. This didn't, and the response afterwards. So it's hard, I think, for people to appreciate what we went through. And now your generation, in all honesty, until COVID, has not been challenged. Life's pretty good. And every year in history, this is true. This is statistically true. We have gotten more peaceful. We live longer. We have better medicine. We have more food. We have more water throughout as all the problems we have. And they're not solved by any means. There's a lot of people in countries that are still struggling. But we have gotten more peaceful and longer lives every year we've advanced in civilization. Every single year it's gotten better. But there's always going to be problems like this. There's going to be things like COVID, and it's up to you guys to deal with it next. What else? Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier that like the NSA and like intelligence agencies like expanding after 9/11. Something I hear a lot people is that they say like the post 9/11 like sort of response was like kind of resulted in a lot of like freedoms and privacy being lost to like law-abiding citizens. Like,
yeah, Freedom of Information Act. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know, just curious to your thoughts.
So basically, there was a lot of Big Brother wanting to keep an eye on everybody. Now, this will happen throughout your lives. This is contentious, right? Because you're a bad example. Nolan is a law-abiding citizen. Okay? Does Nolan care if they watch him?
Yeah.
Maybe. Probably not. Post 9/11, if you wanted freedom to listen to my phone calls or whatever, fine. Okay? Gross, maybe. Browser history. Okay, right? All the jokes and memes, right? So they wanted to be able to keep an eye on everybody for the purpose of safety. All right? But what if, do they have the right to do that? So there was a lot of that happened of where's the line of what, and then of course profiling. Okay, are we only looking at certain sectors, right? Are we only looking at certain races? So all of that factored in, and it's polarizing, and everybody has opinions. And then some people say Nolan is a law-abiding citizen, okay, running his militia in Montana. He does not want anybody watching him. Okay, so it completely depends on your own personal, how you feel about it. If you don't care, then you were okay with it. If you were concerned that it becomes too invasive, then it's a problem. Because again, post-World War II, what did we do with people from Japan? We put them in internment camps. Some of them were trying to serve, they were American citizens. We don't always handle things correctly.
I think another issue with like all like the FISA courts and stuff like that was, I think it was like found out that the government and like the CIA and NSA was like abusing it for not just security of the American people, but they were like getting information on people so that they could blackmail them to then get something.
This is common throughout our history as well. Okay, if you look at in the 50s with the rise of communism, we'd be like, oh, Hannah, she's from Tampa, communist, okay, because we found some Russian that lives there, okay. So yeah, again, we have a very murky history. It's pretty easy to get it. Patrick.
So you mentioned how there were red flags. What's kind of the process of finding said red flags and then determining how to handle them? Is that where the miscommunication came in? Like one agency found a red flag and ignored it, but if they brought it to a different one,
What oftentimes happens, and I'm generalizing, but what happens is if you've got the info, you keep it because you want to be the hero, right? we found this, we know this is going on, and maybe, so you're CIA or NSA, whoever, and Brent is FBI, I don't trust Brent. Okay, or whatever the reason might be, you might not think they'll handle the information right. Or maybe they've got people that have blown the information, right? But the way it happens, I had a great question last class, was TSA, going on flights. You know, you could just go to the gate whenever when your family was flying in, whatever, or say you're going to visit your grandparents, you fly, you could just go to the gate and meet everybody, right? Whenever you have big signs, welcome home, okay? You could go to the gate. All you had to do is go through security, right? And security, I was like 9 years old, and I think I was flying out of Texas, and I had my Mickey Mouse backpack full of toys, right? And I had a squirt gun that looked like a pistol. It was painted like a 9mm. It was black. It wasn't all orange or yellow or whatever now. And I tried to tell my parents, and my dad's a pilot, so I was like, hey, can't bring guns on the plane. And I was full of toys, right? And I'm trying to tell my parents when we're going through security. I was like, hey, I've got this squirt gun in my backpack. They're not going to like it, okay? And they're like, yeah, but if you ever see people traveling with a lot of kids, okay, either offer to help or say a prayer for them or something, because it's hell, okay? It's a nightmare. If you got a lot of siblings and your parents have taken you anywhere, you need to call them and thank them and apologize, okay? It's just hard. So I'm going through, my parents go through security, and they grab my backpack, and they unzip it, you know, like G.I. Joes fall out, and a football, and whatever else, right? And they pull out this pistol, okay? And they're like, yeah, you can't just go, oh, it's a squirt gun. Gave it back to me, let me go. Post 9/11, the small liquids, the taking the shoes off because they stuck razor blades in their shoes. That was some of the weapons they used on the flights. So security changed all through that. Now, it's still not great. My dad's a pilot, and he fly all the time, same airport, and he knew which metal detectors he could go through that would go off and which ones wouldn't, just from flying enough. Didn't take a whole lot to figure it out. Right? I went on a hunting trip years ago and thought I took everything out of the backpack. I had like a 5 or a 6-inch knife in my backpack. Got through security. I had no idea I had it. Got to and back. Security never caught it. Right? So TSA and security and all that stuff have changed quite a bit. What else? Sam.
My uncle, he used to fly for Northwest, followed by the Delta, so back to Northwest.
Uh-huh.
He was in the air when his first plane hit, but he wasn't like really close to that
Mm-hmm.
side. He was grounded like immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Second, there's a movie on Netflix, I think, called Flight 93.
Yes.
Yeah, I watched it lunch.
Thank you for bringing this up. Do you have a point on Flight 93?
I'm just saying it's great. It's good kind of.
Dr. Keller, who runs the Hollingsworth Center, some of you have had him before or not, his Air Force Academy friend and buddy is the co-pilot on Flight 93. And if you want to talk to him about it, he's happy to talk. He'd talk to his classes about it. But that was his good buddy from the Air Force Academy in Flight 93. Yes, sir.
You talked about how a lot of times in terms of foreign policy, America will have really good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
Execution is bad. How would you say we ought to, moving forward at least, knowing what happened in Afghanistan these last 20 years, how do we balance from, not wanting to do nothing, not wanting to just put our hands up and just say there's nothing I can do, and the nation will, or
Mm-hmm.
and kind of loosely define ideology, or it's like the war on terror. It's just how do you, it's normally when we fight wars we have a specific enemy in mind.
Correct.
Fight them, and that's just ambiguous. There's terror everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get forward?
You want me to solve that? We got 10 minutes left. A couple things I'll put in context for you and do my best. Let me know how we do. Okay. How long have we been in Germany and Japan? We haven't left. And it was a book I read. General McChrystal was one of them, and then another one talks about this. When we went to Iraq, okay, we were we're trying to figure out, trying to get Saddam out, and we're like, well, how are the roads, and where can we go, and all this. And there was a local person. He ended up getting killed, but he was pretty high up and could have been a natural next leader for the country. And he answers all these questions that are strategic. They're tactical. Tactical, not strategic. And he's like, okay, are you done asking these questions because you're asking the wrong questions? And he brings it up. How long have you been in Germany and Japan? You haven't left. So if you're just going to come in here and throw Saddam out and leave, you're not helping us. The locals in Iraq and Afghanistan do not want us to leave. They will tell you that for security, and they will tell you that because of what happened in Iraq. And the people on the ground will tell you that too. And again, if you go back in history, we used to have the Office of Indian Affairs in our country because we're trying to get rid of Indians, Native Americans. They were in Washington, D.C. They weren't in Texas, they weren't in New Mexico, they weren't in Utah, they weren't in Oklahoma, they weren't in Oregon, they weren't in California. And they're trying to tell people what to do. So oftentimes what happens is we think we solve a problem, we don't listen to the locals, and then we leave. So we try to help, but we're often not very good listeners. And that's probably something that could change. Again, if you look at Afghanistan, it's kind of an arbitrary deadline, right? Obama reduced people, Trump reduced people, Biden and Trump campaigned on pulling out of Afghanistan. But the execution wasn't great, right? Okay. Did I answer your question? Okay, hopefully. What else? Emily?
I guess, why are we still in Japan and Germany? Is it just because those bases can help us get to like other places in the world? Or?
Partially, okay, so you look at Japan, good location, Germany, middle of Europe, but it's the peace process. It's just communication, all right, of being able to have, if a president says something and then Japan says, why is your president saying they're not going to import items from Japan? It's being able to have those conversations, right? And the United Nations was formed post-World War II because we didn't want to have these silos and problems. It's still not great, but it's better than not. Not every country wants us there or wants all of us, right? I've been to Europe, I've been in Africa a little bit. I can tell you right now that most people around the world are pretty great. Now, people suck, they let you down, right? But most people are the same. I ask you guys what you hope is your most significant accomplishment at the end of your life. Most of you guys talk about family, things like that. Most everyone's the same. We want to be able to provide, we want to have food and shelter and all that. It's pretty simple. But if 1 out of 1,000,000 is a murderer, how many murderers are in this country alone? 330. So all that factors in. Right. Danny, you had something?
I had a quick, just, you don't have to go super far into it, and I guess it could be expounded upon, but not that much more time. Balancing patriotism with a healthy amount of criticism regarding stuff like how Pat Tillman's death was handled and used as propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
How would you recommend we, especially as like military and stuff, handle? I guess like, is there like a perfect balance of like criticism, but also like supporting your country? Like, where's that line? If you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Everybody hear? Here's where I think we learned from Vietnam. Really polarizing time in this country. A lot of people didn't want us there, including some locals, right? We're trying to fight communism. It's never worked. Pretty easy argument to make. But different warfare, and at home, we were criticizing the troops. And that's a shift now. So if you're a peaceful, anti-war person, that's a valid feeling, but we still support the troops because they didn't pick the fight. So I think we learned, because, military members were coming home in Vietnam and being told to put on civilian clothes before they got off the plane so they didn't get spit on. I think this country shifted a lot in that, to understand and appreciate you don't get to pick the fight. So I think that's a good natural progress. For you guys, if you want to know how to deal with this and combat it, you need to learn. You need to read, learn history, learn American history, learn there's a lot. I remember being in Spain with my broken Spanish, sitting in a bar with some locals, and they wanted to talk about American history. And we did pretty good until I got to Vietnam, and my vocabulary wasn't that great. But they knew our entire history because it was so short. Spain's history is like thousands of years. Learn about our history, right? And learn about you get into elections, pretty much been corrupt every time, right? How we handled slavery, okay? Lincoln and all his buddies wanted to end it. We're still racist, but they knew it was bad and wanted to end it. So we're trying and we're learning. Like Hoover said, if we don't learn our history, we're going to repeat the mistakes.
I wish someone told me that soon.
We're trying. Look, education's wasted on the youth. I didn't like reading either when I was your guys' age, but find stuff that interests you. Okay, the Lone Survivor book, don't watch the movie. The movie's dog shit. Okay, what's his name is this tall. Marcus Luttrell's like 6'4". Okay, you know, God, the Pearl Harbor movie was awful, right? Read some books, listen to some podcasts, talk to your parents and grandparents. Talk to the people that have lived through it and learn. This is emotional stuff. That's a great question. This isn't easy, guys. This is what SOMS is for. All right? This is the opportunity to have those conversations. I get an hour a week. So, but learn as much as you can. Usually, I've done it before. If you guys are young, I will ask you questions. Tell me about Martin Luther King, and you'll be like, had affairs. Tell me about Ulysses Grant. Oh, he was a drunk. You guys remember like the worst things about people. It's weird. Okay? Grant drank when he was bored. Sound familiar? Okay? I just read 3 books about Teddy Roosevelt. Incredible stuff. Not every legend about him's true. Right? So just learn about stuff as much as you can. You're here to get an education. Take advantage of that. What else before we wrap up?
Every legend about Davy Crockett is 100% true.
What else? Yes, sir.
In the end, do you think we got justice?
Oh, man. You know, getting bin Laden was a big deal. Getting bin Laden was a big deal. It was a ginger that got him, too. From Montana. It was a redhead. Okay. That was a big deal. It was hard. It took us a long time to do that. It's just it was different. I quickly, when I went through Air Force survival school, and they teach you, they put you in POW camp, and there's 3 different kinds. There's like POW camp, which is like based on Vietnam and the Iraq War and stuff like that. And then there's peacetime detention. Say this is true. We had a plane go down off the coast of China, and they were like, "Why are you guys here?" And they just put you in a hotel room, and everything's cool, right? But they're still watching you. And then we have terrorism training. POW camp, my job, if Sam is my captor, my job is to make him like me so he doesn't beat me up. Okay? Terrorism, don't care. We had several people lose it when we went through terrorism training. There's some stuff I could tell you, but it's classified. I'd have to kill you all with my pinky, which I can do now. Just kidding. It escalates quickly, so it's entirely different, and that's what changed our world in my generation. Right? And it's up to you. Hopefully, it's not the deaths of thousands. Something's going to go down that's going to challenge your guys' generation, and it's up to you guys. Not terribly uplifting today. Hopefully, valuable. Okay. I'll get a discussion posted on